Welcome. In this video, we're going to restore a 60-year-old Thorn 14-foot aluminum boat. It has not been used in 19 years. Today, I'm going to mount the outboard remote control. This is the unit that controls the throttle and the shift operations, forward and reverse. This was mounted in the past, although not very professionally. I'm going to fix that. You can see a couple of large rivets are still in place. Clearly, the old mounting base long since rotted away, leaving the aluminum rivets. Here I'm transferring their location to the plywood. Now to remove them, first using a Dremel tool to remove their heads, and then drilling out the majority of the rivet, ensuring not to enlarge the holes. Transferring the holes to the new board and test fitting the new rivets.
Okay. See if we can make that fit.
With these two rivets correctly located, I added a third middle rivet later.
That is perfect.
I'm now going to make an aluminum cover for this plywood to prolong its life. Here I'm clecoing a scrap piece of 1/8 inch aluminum road sign to some plywood. Anytime I need to cut aluminum on the table saw, I secure the material to wood to increase the integrity during the cut. I have removed my cabinet blade from the table saw and installed an old wood blade that I use for aluminum. Here I'm drilling a corner relief as I plan on bending this aluminum in two directions here.
I've just gone back to the table saw and removed these two notches here. So these are going to be bend lines, and the whole thing is going to provide a nice little finished cover over top of this panel.
Watch what happens here. Because the flange is so short, the bending brake is pushing the piece out of alignment.
No, it's going back in. I don't want that.
So I screwed 3 screws into the table to use as firm stops.
Don't go anywhere.
And then try it again.
It's bending. Perfect. Okay, I got to move that box a little further. Let's take a look at that, see how parallel that is. That is pretty good.
With the top folded, I did the two ends. I went to the end of the brake to ensure there was enough space for the first bend.
Awesome. So here's the part I just made. It's made from an old road sign. This will be the part that's visible. And here's the board that goes in behind it, just like that. And I'm pretty impressed with this. Here's a close-up of the backside.
Here I have the mounting board clamped to the outboard remote control unit. I'm doing this to transfer the bolt holes to the plywood. I then installed 4 1/4 inch T-nuts into the back side of the plywood. This will enable me to use bolts instead of screws to mount this remote control unit. With the holes and the T-nuts installed, I can rivet the mounting plate to the boat.
That is awesome.
Checking the movement of the steering, throttle, and transmission.
Forward, neutral, reverse, neutral. Okay, everything's working. On to the next item.
So here's another item that needs attention, the boat's drain. This isn't a new problem. When we bought this boat some 28 years ago, the drain was questionable then. It requires a shallow threaded plug. I do like the design, but the threads are trashed, and now the plug, that would frequently pop out, is missing. If you look underneath, they have even built in a shallow skid protection plate to reduce drag and to protect the integrity of the hole. It is a good design. It also creates a little bit of a problem to make use of an aftermarket drop-in compression plug, as they are long. You can see the threads are done. So, not counting the depth of the threads, this is a 1-inch hole. The least expensive and possibly easiest solution might be to buy a 1-inch twist-turn marine boat brass drain plug with a neoprene seal. I'm not sure if this will seal, as it'll be pushing up against threads, but it's worth a try. The only thing that I'd have to do to install this plug would be to make room for the bolt. So I drilled a small hole in the center of the shield. So this tightened right up, but will it seal against the threads? Here's a look underneath. Well, as it turned out, it worked great. If it didn't, I would have drilled the entire hole out to 1 1/4 inches and used a 1 1/4 inch plug. But no need, this worked. Okay, on to the next item. Okay, let's tackle the winch. It is completely seized and in desperate need of attention. Initially, I couldn't take anything apart or even move anything, so I started with some penetrating oil. Then added oil to the main axle.
Oh, that's better already.
With repeat movement, I was able to coat the entire axle and all moving parts with lubricant. With the main system working, time to start to remove the corrosion. Nothing magical here, just time and patience. Everything needed attention. I used a variety of tools, from a drill to a sander to a Dremel with a couple of different attachments. Eventually I got down to bare metal. I then used crown, rust protection, and lubricant on everything. Can't forget about the eyelet on the bow of the boat. With the corrosion looked after and everything protected with rust protection and lubricant, time to install a new rope. So this looks simple enough, doesn't it? Well, this took me over an hour to secure the rope to the winch.
Ooh, I think that one started.
The bolts have to be extremely short for clearance reasons.
Started. Now what's the chance of me getting this one in? 0!
And it took a variety of tools to complete this work.
Oh my gosh, I might even get this.
Okay, on to the next task. About 25 years ago, I converted this boat from a sit-at-the-back tiller steer to an Ezy-Glide stick steer. It took some ingenuity, aircraft cable, pulleys, turnbuckles, and a screen door hinge. But what a fantastic conversion. You sit up front in a comfortable seat with much better weight and balance distribution. Having not touched this boat for 19 years, the steering needed a little attention. The Ezy-Glide system itself was completely seized. Off camera, I soaked the system in lubricants for multiple days, and now that is working. Well, we have the engine moving for the first time in 19 years. Adding a little bit of lubricant and anti-corrosion to moving parts, and our steering system is once again operational. Incidentally, If you're looking at the size of this engine as compared to the width of the boat, you are correct. We are right at the upper level of an acceptable power plant. This 25 horsepower can pull a 200-pound skier on one ski. 20 years ago, I tried a 35 horsepower on the boat for a few weeks, and both weight and power were too much. You had to sit in the front of the boat to prevent capsizing during acceleration. 25 is a good fit, although still very powerful. With the engine centered on the new transom and the steering connected, I can now bolt the engine in place. Added some Loctite to the threads, a washer, lock washer, and a bolt. Okay, on to the next task. So it has been 19 years since this engine was connected to a proper fuel tank. The fittings are loose, the hoses are brittle, and the tank is rusty. Here's a new fitting next to the old. Although the dimensions are similar, they are for two different kinds of engines. Since I have it on hand, I'm going to try to make it work. Notice the offset between the guiding pin and the fuel delivery are similar. However, the actual fuel ports are different sizes.
That is bigger. That's smaller. Yep.
Checking the seal, spring, and release valve on the old connection. Tracing the dimensions of the old connector onto the new. Cutting the new fuel connector to fit the Johnson outboard. Here you can see the notch I removed. So the new fitting holds tight, but notice the side-to-side movement due to the different size fuel ports.
Okay, so I don't know if that's going to leak. I guess we'll find out. That feels tighter than the correct one. I'll try this one first, and if it leaks, I'll try to make the old one work. Wow, that feels tight. I don't know, maybe we get lucky. Let's see.
Nope, we won't. It'll leak like a sieve. But for now, let's move on to focus on the fuel tank. 19 years of rust.
Well, can this be saved?
I've seen worse.
Looking on the underside of the fuel gauge, I see the fuel gauge axle itself is broken. Take a look here. Look at this. Right here. So there's movement. Get out of the way there. Alright, well that can be repaired. I'm going to see if I can restore this tank.
So let's whip up a new tank. Here are the ingredients. 3 gallons of vinegar, 1 cup of 3/8 inch nuts, 3/4 of a cup of 1/4 inch nuts, 1.5 cups of roofing nails, and tumble for 60 minutes. I jacked up the tractor, disengaged the seat override, secured one wheel with ropes, and strapped the tank to the other. I let it tumble for 60 minutes. While the tank was tumbling, I started to remove the rust off the fuel level arm. It is fairly pitted, but I don't see any reason why I shouldn't put this back into service. Well, 60 minutes are up. I'll check the tank, ensure it's full of vinegar, and then I'll let it sit for a few days.
We'll let that sit for a little bit. Okay, it's starting to work. We're gonna do more.
So we repeated this exercise a second time, tumbling for 60 minutes and then letting it sit for 36 hours.
Okay, so you have the honors.
Here we're adding a little red paint to our fuel gauge indicator. Make it a little more visible. The connections I modified leaked, so here are the new ones. And they fit tight. Excellent. Time to neutralize the vinegar. I've dumped a box of baking soda into the hot water, and I'm going to use a siphon spray blowgun to coat the tank.
Holy crow! Look at that! That is a lot better. Let's keep working on it.
With the tank set aside, I'm disassembling the fuel gauge and fuel pickup. The glass just needed some minor cleaning. I like simple, elegant solutions. Here's a close-up of how the fuel gauge works. The plastic fuel gauge hinge was broken, so I'm just using a small bolt to replace it. 2 nuts and 1 tiny little lock washer to hold the fuel gauge in place. So here's the finished tank. Not perfect, but significantly better than what I started with. Clogged fuel filters and time will tell with respect to whether this repair worked or not. Reattaching the gauge and fuel pickup to the tank. About 25 years ago, I built this wooden floor for our boat for comfort and to aid in keeping your feet dry as you remain slightly elevated off the aluminum floor. They haven't been touched in at least 18 years. Some of the rope holding the boards together had rotted, and a few of the boards themselves needed some minor repair. But for the most part, with a little bit of cleaning and repair, I should be able to bring this floor back. With the boards clean and dry, I started pulling on the rope to see if I could get it to break. I was surprised to find most of the rope still was very strong, but some definitely needed to be replaced. Only one board actually needed glue and clamps to repair its end. Tying on to the existing rope proved more challenging than I first figured. You learn as you go. Towards the end, I was getting pretty efficient at tying knots. I didn't spend a lot of time sanding here. I just took the rough edges off. Well, I stress tested the rope one more time and one of the knots broke, the knot where I had connected it to the old rope, so I chose to replace that entire line. Here I am applying a thin coat of brown tinted wood preservative. 2 coats later and it doesn't look too bad. I'll do the other side off camera after it dries. Okay, let's put them in the boat.
Unravel your side.
You'd be surprised how much a difference this makes regarding comfort while moving around in the boat. This is the first time this boat and motor have been in the water in 19 years. I had forgotten how powerful this motor is on such a small boat. What a fantastic project. Hey, thanks for watching.